There are millions of podcasts being done all over the world that take on the personalities of their creator. Some bring in thousands of listeners each week. Some bring in large amounts of revenue, while others entertain millions and help sell products. If you're like many podcasters, you want to reach your maximum potential. But how? How do you make your podcast stand out from all the rest? Join Dr. Barrett Matthews as he talks to experts who are doing it on The Productive Podcaster. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Productive Podcaster. I am Dr. Barrett Matthews. And if this is your first time, I want to make sure you know what the show is about, first of all. The Productive Podcaster is for those people who are interested in podcasting. Whether you're brand new and you're thinking, oh, God, I want to get it right, or you're somebody who's a veteran, you're saying, you know what, I might want to pick up something new, or you're somebody considering podcasting, but you're saying, oh, God, what do I do? This is for you. Because what we do here is we bring on different people to show how their podcasts are still productive. And there's a myriad of ways that they do them. There's no cookie cutter way for you to do a podcast. So the Productive Podcaster is about that. So the first thing I want you to do, guys, I want you to share this podcast. Let everyone know you're listening to the Productive Podcaster. Let everyone know that. And I want you to make sure you have everybody subscribe to it so that we can make sure we keep you guys in the loop as to what's going on with this particular podcast. Now, I like to start off every single episode with a little segment I like to call pros and cons.
Pros and cons.
Now, what is pros and cons, you ask? Pros and cons is what I give you a pro tip on how to be a productive podcaster. Now, today's tip is about publishing. Well, it's really more about accessibility, making your podcast more accessible. One of the ways to do that is to publish a transcript. A lot of times people want to see the transcript of your podcast. They want to see, everything that was written, that was said in written form, so they can pick up certain things. And one way to do that is to get some certain keywords in there that your audience responds to. Some people who may not even listen to it may see those keywords and may want to tune in and listen to your podcast, and it makes it more accessible to more people out there. So that is your pros and cons tip for today. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. I'm going to have a very special guest. And I know you all say the same thing all the time. You always say your guests are special. It's because they are. So we're going to be right back with a very special guest. So I want you guys to hang tight. We'll be right back in 2 and 2. How are you going to learn everything you need to know about starting a podcast? Well, at the Create Your Podcast Weekend, we put it all in 2 days and help you get your podcast going by next week. That's right, by next week. All you have to do is come to the Create Your Podcast Weekend and let us show you how to get your podcast up and running. We will show you how to attract listeners. We will show you how to get people to pay you for your products and services. What products and services? The products and services we show you how to create, all at the Create Your Podcast Weekend. All you have to do is go to createyourpodcastweekend.com and get registered today. And we have special bonuses. Some of you will even get us to give you the equipment to start your podcast. That's right. We're going to give some of you the podcasting equipment to get started. Go to createyourpodcastweekend.com. That's createyourpodcastweekend.com and get started on your podcast by next week. Why should you contact Media Boss Club right now? Well, because you can get a podcast done for you. You can learn all the aspects that go into putting together a great podcast and have someone else do it for you. That's right. We will build your podcast around your content and make it so you can concentrate on the money-making activities of your business. Contact MediaBossClub.com. That's MediaBossClub.com today and let us get your podcast started right now. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Productive Podcaster. I am Dr. Barrett Matthews, as I said before the break, and I want to welcome you guys back. As I mentioned also, I have a very special guest. Now, this here, I want to talk to the ladies here. No, this is not some romantic thing. I want to say, ladies, do you ever feel that you're lonely? Did you ever feel that you need some guidance, some strengthening, some encouragement? Well, my guest today, Zenobia Jackson, she talks about that all in her podcast. She empowers women. She shows you how to bring out the best within you. And I am happy to have her here. So I want you guys to give a nice productive podcaster welcome to Zenobia Jackson. Welcome, my queen.
Thank you so much, King Barrett, for having me on. It's an awesome opportunity. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you're here. So first of all, I want to know what to a podcast.
What caused me to start this podcast? Essentially just wanting to be my sister's keeper, wanting to make sure that women knew they were not alone, especially during the time of the pandemic. And so that's where the podcast was birthed, because communication was limited, resources were limited. There were many people suffering in silence, many women in particular suffering in silence. And I just wanted women to know, hey, I'm here. I want to be a voice of reasoning and of hope for my sisters.
Okay, so that's how the podcast started. So let me ask you something. There are various ways to get the message out. What made you say podcast?
Well, it was something new. So I never had tried a podcast before, but I felt like I would be able to reach more women that way. And that it will be something easily accessible for them to just kind of hop on, click on, and just listen for 10 to 15 minutes. Because my podcasts aren't that long, because I know as women, we have a lot of responsibilities. And so I wanted to kind of be like that midday, early morning, late afternoon, whenever they could hop on, time to kind of just be revitalized and encouraged.
Now, Zenobia, you just hit on something I wanted to ask you about. Now, you said your podcasts are about 15 minutes. Why did you choose that time frame? There's nothing wrong with it being short. There's nothing wrong with it being a little longer. But why did you choose that time for it?
Because I'm a woman. And I know how busy I am. And if there's anything that's worth being said, it doesn't take long to get the message across. And so I wanted to make sure that my time was short and concise. But also something that will cause them to want to come back to hear more.
Very good answer. I like that because I'm a woman. So, I like that. That was a great answer. So have you felt, now how long have you been running your podcast now?
I want to say, Barrett, 6 months. It hadn't even been a year.
Okay, good. Let me tell you something. There are a lot of people that go 4 episodes and they out. They're out. So 6 months that's a milestone. Great job. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to hearing more of that. So I want to ask you this, as a podcaster now, and since your podcast is about more service, because you like to help people, have you felt or have you seen anything that your podcast has done to help anyone yet? Have they told you?
Definitely. So a lot of women reach out to me on social media or Instagram, because those are my 2 social media platforms that I've been pushing out, and just, encouraging me in Messenger, like, hey, Queen, I heard today's podcast and it was as if you were speaking to me, or, I didn't know that you experienced this, or maybe one of my guests that I had on the show, I didn't know that, other women were thinking these things or felt this way. And so it was kind of like connecting with women all over that I don't know. But however, I knew it was a mandate for me to start this podcast, because like I said earlier, we as women, we're suffering in silence. We wear the face, we put on the mascara and the lipstick and the outfits, and we're looking good on the outside, but in the inside, we are struggling. And so they reach out and it's like, hey, I'm glad that QueenTruthSpoken exists. I'm glad that I can, be encouraged. And I'm glad that I'm not going crazy like other women are.
Right.
What I'm experiencing as well. And so it's been great.
So you're saying it's been helpful to you too?
Yes, it's been helpful for me as far as even bringing new content to the podcast, because women will often, after even encouraging me and saying how the podcast has helped them, they would say, well, have you thought about this? Or I have a friend that's dealing with that. And so they're actually just being very vocal on more topics that we could actually discuss as women.
Now, do your podcast, is it with guests or is it just you?
It initially started with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say on the second episode, or no, not the second episode, the second season, because we're in season 4 now. But the second season, I began to invite women on the panel to kind of, just share their life stories. I wanted them to be able to give life and light by sharing their experiences, and in return, helping other women with their stories.
Do you like one more than the other? Being by yourself or a guest? Which one do you like better?
I love my guests. I love interviewing women. It's like we just when the sparks fly,
yeah,
it's magnetic. It's crazy. And so I feed off of that. I feed off the energy of, my sisters when we're sitting and talking, just having a conversation as if we've known each other for years. So definitely I prefer the interviews, the guests.
no, I get it. And I ask you that because some people prefer just doing the talking themselves. Some people prefer guests. There's no wrong way. I just wanted to find out, since you've done both, which one. I just wanted to find out which one you prefer. That's good. So yeah. How often do you do your podcast?
I do my podcast every 3 months. And or 2 months. I'm sorry, every 2 months. And I only do 10 episodes.
Okay.
So like, for example,
so are they weekly? Are they daily? How are they?
They're weekly, every Monday at 12 noon.
Okay. So you do weekly.
Mm-hmm. So for example, when I started, I want to say I started in March, put out 10 episodes. And then I came back in season 2, March, April, May with season 2. So it's like I skip a month, rest, get my mind focused, reaching out to women to be a part of the podcast, and we go from there.
And I want everybody watching and listening to this to make sure you heard that. She already makes sure she has some in the can, because anything can come up in your life, and it may preclude you from going and doing something. Some people like doing them live, and that's fine, but you want to have something in the can. Exactly. And you never know, because you never know how long you might be away from your podcast in case an emergency comes up. So if you already got something going, you can keep going, and your interviews can just go on and on and on. And by the time, it gives you time to catch up.
Exactly. And plus you want to serve well. You want to be your very best when you're doing your podcast, whether you're by yourself or you're interviewing people. And so that's why I have that moment in time where I can kind of just rest and reflect. Because once again, I'm a woman. I have many, many responsibilities, and I don't want to negate family or other things or my business. So that's one of the reasons why I do the podcast that way. And so you'll be hearing content from July all the way to September, and I may be on the beach chilling somewhere.
There you go. I love it. That's what it's about. So I gotta ask you this, because it all sounds good, but what kind of challenges did you run into when you first started podcasting, or still run into?
When I first started, just the system, how it works, how to upload, what platform. It was so many platforms: Captivate, Anchor, what mic to use. I mean, all kinds of things, and so for me, I had to be schooled. I had to kind of self-educate myself. And so I have so many YouTube videos in my storage on YouTube, and just really trying to educate myself. And I've messed up many, many times. I'm thinking something has been uploaded and it's not. So there are a lot of hurdles that I have had to, overcome, but it was all in learning. It was challenging, but I learned even from my mistakes in doing the podcast.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad you said that, because there are people out there right now that are scared of messing up. It's okay to mess up. It's okay. I mean, first of all, it's your podcast. No one's going to kill you for it. If you mess up, you mess up. And I'm one of those people that I get people all the time saying, well, can you edit out my mistakes? Because, I produce podcasts as well. But people, can you edit? I'm like, leave the mistakes in there. Yeah. People want to know you're human.
Yeah. They want to be able to relate to you. And One of the things that I have learned, and my husband often says that it's okay to fail as long as you fail forward.
That's right. That's right. I mean, because the thing is, I always say, if I hear something that's too perfect, then I'm feeling like I can't do it.
Exactly.
So it's okay to mess up. It's okay to flub a word here and there. You probably heard me at the beginning of the show. I messed up some words. It's okay. I'm human. I'm human. So I can live with that. Now,
perfect. You sound perfect.
well, thank you very much. The check will be there shortly. But but I mean, when you're talking about doing your podcast, do you still run into any challenges? Do you still run into anything that you feel you got to work on?
Well, definitely. Like we stated earlier about what I prefer, even though I prefer having guests and doing the interviews, I've had sometimes women say, well, hey, yeah, I would love to do it. And the day of the interview, something happened. And so I had to like, okay, how am I going to reroute this thing? You know, because in my mind, I gotta have 10 episodes. It cannot be 9. I gotta have
right.
So, my mind just began to, try to figure out and try to, find a solution. And gratefully and thankfully, there's always been a ram in the bush, but there are times where people say, hey, I'm going to show up, and they just don't for whatever reason. And I just try my best not to take it personal, because you just never know. And just be able to extend grace and continue to move on,
And I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you to do this. Please tell everyone the name of your podcast.
Oh yes, QueenTruthSpoken podcast.
QueenTruthSpoken podcast.
Yes, QueenTruthSpoken is all about helping women figure out their everyday reality. So they have these everyday trials and traumas and situations, and we provide the platform for them to share. And so it's like, it's okay. I understand this is a real reality for you. At the same time, we're going to apply God's truth to it.
I love it.
That's what QueenTruthSpoken is all about, tackling real realities with God's eternal truth.
I love that. I love it. Now, is your podcast simply audio, or is there audio and video?
Well, season 4 is audio and video. I had a wonderful coach that kind of helped me to be like, stretch yourself a little bit. And I'm so grateful and indebted to him for that. So season 4, we're going to actually have audio and video.
All right. So how do you feel about that?
I'm excited. I am excited for the guests, for their faces to be seen, because it gives a different perspective for people to actually see the person. I believe it just makes it more relatable and more close, like creating a more close-knit community with our audience. So
and see, for those of you who are listening instead of watching, you might want to check her out on YouTube, because she's got a beautiful wrap on her head right now. Some nice, beautiful earrings. She's looking like the whole queen part. Yeah. She is looking the part. She's doing the doggone thing. So, I mean, for those of you, check us out on YouTube, because you'll get a chance to see what she looks like as well, because she is doing it. So the audio sometimes may not do it justice. I'm just saying, you might want to check out everything there, because she's encompassing all that. So, what is the next step for your podcast? What do you think is the next step for your podcast?
Next step for QueenTruthSpoken. I want us to go deeper. I want the content to be deeper and more relevant for today's woman. I want to be able to even, because I'm a former educator / I had a mentoring program. So I want to get some of our younger queens on.
All right.
Yeah, like maybe ages, 15 to 21, because they have stories to share. They have stories to tell as well. And so it's all about women. I have a strong love for my sisters. It doesn't matter what color they are. It's the fact that we have one thing in common, that we are women, and that, we need each other. And that, for me, if we can begin to truly strengthen the bonds of sisterhood, that foundation really being love, not color, not age, not religion, but the foundation is love, then, oh my gosh, like what the things we could really do. Come on now.
Oh, that was so well said. Very well said, Zenobia Jackson. So please tell everyone where they can find your podcast.
Awesome. Well, you all can find my podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and now on YouTube at QueenTruthSpoken TV on Mondays at 12 noon.
All right. Fantastic. Guys, make sure that you are subscribing to her podcast, QueenTruthSpoken Podcast. Make sure you're subscribing to her podcast. Make sure you are following her. because you will, I mean, you just heard her talk about it. It was from the heart. You're going to grow from listening to her podcast. And I think everybody should be all about love and working together on things. So Zenobia, thank you for joining us on the Productive Podcast. But guys, don't worry, she's not going anywhere. She's going to be right back as we go on to our next segment, which is PodQuest. We're going to take an audience question. And I know y'all want to ask some questions out there. Type up, go to the Facebook group. I told y'all that. So make sure you do that. But we'll be right back with more of the Productive Podcaster. It's time to be a boss, a media boss. If you're in business for yourself, it's time that you get your message out. And podcasting is the best way to do it. Let us create a done-for-you podcast experience with Media Boss Club. All you have to do is go to MediaBossClub.com and we'll create a done-for-you podcast right now. That's MediaBossClub.com. Starting a podcast can be a daunting task. There's a lot that goes into it, and you're probably wondering if you're able to handle it. Well, why don't you just take 2 days and let us teach you how to do it at the Create Your Podcast Weekend. That's right. We're going to show you all the aspects of how to start your podcast, how to keep your podcast going, how to attract listeners, and how to make money with your podcast. CreateYourPodcastWeekend.com. Get registered right now. Let's face it, you've been talking about starting a podcast for quite some time, but you haven't started yet. Why is that? Could it be that you just don't have the time because your day-to-day keeps you so busy? Or could it be that you don't want to learn all the technical aspects that go into putting together a quality podcast? Well, at Media Boss Club, we take care of that for you. How would you like to have a done-for-you experience? That's right. At Media Boss Club, we build your podcast for you. We will edit your podcast. We will put in the music for you. We even put in commercial breaks that you can put your advertisers in. We will take care of all of the uploading to the great podcast platforms that are out there. That's right, we do everything. All you have to do is just right now go to MediaBossClub.com. That's MediaBossClub.com and let us handle the heavy lifting for you. All right, everybody, we're back. We're back with the Productive Podcast. I told y'all Zenobia Jackson was a special guest, and she's not gone anywhere. But before I bring her back up for our next segment, I want to mention to you guys that podcasting is just one step in media. I want to tell you guys, if you want to learn more about how to take your business to different platforms in media, I want you to go to MakeMoneyFromMediaChallenge.com. I'm doing a challenge right now. It's a 5-day challenge for all of you. Make money from MediaChallenge.com. And we're going to take 5 days, just a couple hours a day, and you're going to learn some things. The VIPs get some special treatment, of course, you're VIPs, but I want to make sure you guys take advantage of it. Go to MakeMoneyFromMediaChallenge.com and make sure you get in there. Take the challenge. I want you to challenge yourself and learn more about how to make money from media. So I want to make sure we do that. So I'm going to bring back on Zenobia for a segment that we like to call PodQuest.
PodQuest.
And PodQuest is a segment where we take an audience question and we answer that. So Zenobia, welcome back. So I'm going to give you the question. The question we have right now is, can podcasting be a full-time job?
Can podcasting be a full-time job? I believe podcasting can be a full-time job. However, there's stages to becoming a full-time podcaster. And so I think about even when I left my job as an educator, I had to save up. I had like a little nest egg. And so I knew that I wanted to be able to invest in my own business. I just couldn't leave my job with nothing. And so it just depends on what stage or what phase you are in podcasting. If you're a beginner, if you've already been doing it for maybe 2 or 3 years, And then if if you have been doing it for, longer than that, I will say this: in creating your podcast, and if you want this to be a career, your job, you have to begin to set up those things now, like packages that you can offer your listeners, promotional material, different forms of marketing where you can begin to bring in streams of income, because you still have to live. And so I would say definitely make sure you have your blueprint of your ideas of what you want to do and ways in which you see that you can bring some money in. And let your family and your friends know, let everybody know what you're doing so they can be on board to support you. No man, no woman is an island. So
Right.
you would definitely not be able to do it by yourself. But I definitely think that you can be a podcaster full time.
Okay. And my answer to that is yes and no. It depends on how you meant that question. Now, can it be a job, a full-time job? That sounds like some drudgery. That sounds like something I don't want to do. That sounds like you're working for someone else. And I say that because there's some podcasters right now, and they don't like doing it anymore. It's no longer fun. And when it's no longer fun, it becomes a job. Mm-hmm. So yes, it can be a full-time job. Now, can it be a full-time business? Yes, it can too. So when you're doing that, going back to more of what Zenobia was talking about, you got to make sure, first of all, how you're going to monetize it. Do you have an audience? Do you have a way to grow your audience? Do you have a way to sustain it? And there's going to be a lot of things that go into that. It can be, I think a lot of people go into it with the idea that it's going to happen overnight. And that is not the case. It's not the case. I mean, if you have a following, a loyal following, you still have to figure out how you're going to monetize the podcast. Just because you could have 10,000 people following you, that doesn't mean they're going to pay you. Mm-hmm. So you have to figure out, are you going to get those people paying you? Are you going to get sponsors to pay you? Are you going to do other things, sell things to get paid for it? What are you going to do to get paid for it? If you can figure out all those things, then yes, you can make it a full-time business. I don't want to make it into a full-time job. So it depends on how you meant that. Now, for those of you who are wondering right now, how do you get a question submitted and answered for the show? Well, you have to join the Facebook group. What's the Facebook group? The Productive Podcaster. Join the Facebook group, submit your question. But here's the other thing I want you to do. Engage. Ask questions in the group. Answer questions in the group. I repeat this right now for you because I've said it before. Don't go into the group to sell your wares. Don't go into the group to promote your podcast. The only people that can promote a podcast in that group are people who are clients in my business or people who have been a guest on the show. Everyone else, you cannot promote your podcast there because you will be deleted from the group. And I don't want to do that to you. So what I want you to do is contribute, add to the group, add some substance to the group. And we want to help everyone out there to be productive podcasters. So Zenobia, before I let you go, I would like you to tell everyone once again the name of your podcast and where they can find it.
I sure will, Barrett. The name of the podcast is QueenTruthSpoken Podcast. You can find me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. And now we're actually on YouTube, QueenTruthSpoken TV. And that's on Mondays at 12 noon.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you once again, Zenobia. Guys, we're going to move to the next segment right now, which is called our podcast profile. This is where I found a podcast that I like, and I thought you may like it as well. So hopefully you'll get a chance to listen to it. It's a podcast called Anything Goes with Emma Chamberlain. And Emma just has different thoughts that come in her mind. And she shares, it could be about business. It could be about relationships. It could be about anything. And she likes to bring it to the public on her podcast. Anything Goes with Emma Chamberlain. So check it out. Now, it's also time for our podcast giveaway. Now, today, Rob Patterson, you're going to get an audio copy of my book, Why Didn't You Get It Done? So congratulations, Rob, you get that audio copy of my book. And some of you are wondering right now, well, how come I don't get something? How can I get it? Well, you can. How do you do it? You join the Facebook group, The Productive Podcaster. When you join there and you engage, we may call your name to get one of the prizes as well. Also, guys, I want to make sure I remind you before we go, because I'm hoping Zenobia will be there, to Make Money from Media Challenge. I'm telling you guys, learn different ways that you can utilize the media. you are leaving money on the table. And we're going to talk about that right now at the Make Money from Media Challenge. If you go to makemoneyfrommediachallenge.com, I hope to see you guys there. Now, as we like to close the show every time, I like to give a productivity quote to you guys, a productivity quote, because I want you guys to go through life being more productive. This one comes from David Allen. He wrote a book called Ready for Anything, 52 Productivity Principles for Getting Things Done. And he says, sometimes the biggest gain in productive energy will come from cleaning the cobwebs, dealing with old business, and clearing the desk, cutting loose debris that's impeding forward motion. Ooh, I'm gonna read that one more time. Sometimes the biggest gain in productive energy will come from cleaning the cobwebs, dealing with old business, and clearing desks, cutting loose debris that's impeding forward progress. That's from David Allen. Man, I'm telling you, that will help you to be more productive and being a productive podcaster as well. So guys, make sure that you are sharing the Productive Podcaster with people. Make sure you are subscribing. Make sure you guys sign up for the Make Money from Media Challenge. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you guys there. Coming up in a couple of weeks. I want to see you guys there. So make sure you go there, get your spot right now, get your ticket, get a VIP if you want to. There's some special stuff for you guys as well. But I want to see you guys next time on the Productive Podcast. I want to thank my guest, Zenobia Jackson. Make sure you subscribe to her podcast as well. And as I always say before I sign off, everyone, don't just settle for being awesome. Set your goal to all them all. And take action, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Productive Podcaster. Thank you for joining us on the Productive Podcaster. Be sure to join us next time for another great show. We welcome your engagement, so make sure you participate by joining the Productive Podcaster Facebook group and chime in. Also, share the Productive Podcaster with some of your friends right now. If you have a podcast and you're looking for guests, or if you would like to be a guest on a podcast, join our podcast exchange at www.podcastworlddirectory.com. We'll see you next time.